Guys, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the main event of Pirate Con Week 3, supporting lesser-known comics. We're diving into the main event of episode 51 with lesser-known comics writer and owner, a 17-year veteran. Thank you for your service, Mr. Mark Bernal.
Yeah, thank you for your support. It's I actually get my retirement paperwork on Tuesday.
Wow, so that's got to be like a big deal, right?
It is, yeah. It's kind of a closing of a big chapter of my life, and on to do something completely different.
Dude, it's amazing what you're doing and kind of seeing how lesser known has grown. And if I can say anything, this from my first order to my second order, to see how many order numbers have jumped, I think that you guys are doing all right.
It's there's a lot of just trying to build like the actual infrastructure of a company, because I don't know if I gave you the backstory, but this if someone had told me a year or 18 months ago, like, hey, you're going to have a comic book company, I would have had no idea what the hell they were talking about. I started with working with a couple of artists for one book. I was going to choose from one of three artists to work on a story I was developing, fell in love with all three of them and said, okay, well, maybe we can work on three stories and they could overlap, and we could start building like a little bit of a mini universe. And they served as a lightning rod to other creators and illustrators that just started saying, hey, can we make a book with you too? Can we make a book with you too? And then all of a sudden my wife walks in and there's a conference call with 14 team members at that point, and she was like, I said you had permission to do a comic book, not like
not take this thing to the moon.
Yeah.
But so being in the military when you were doing that, comics wasn't even a thought.
No. Pardon me. Yeah. So I grew up, I watched, X-Men animated series, Spider-Man animated series, Batman animated series. And, back then there would be comics in the grocery store occasionally, you could pester your mom to be like, hey, can I get this? But like a lot of people not growing up with a lot of money, just didn't have, access to a lot of comic books. So fast forward to when that Watchmen series came out on HBO. It was based on the comic or the graphic novel rather than, the Zack Snyder movie. I was like, oh, I gotta reread it, because I read it like when I was like 7 and had no business reading a Watchmen graphic novel. But and then I had like this realization. I was like, oh, I'm like an adult, like in my late 30s. Like I can afford comic books now. Like so then I just started consuming. It was almost like getting a bunch of deleted scenes for all these characters and universe that and stories I've been, loved as a kid. So so I'm a little late to the game in that, in that regard.
Did you sound just like me and my friends when we talk about this stuff? It's like we're kind of all a little late to the game, but it's so awesome to be able to go back and just like buy bits of your childhood back.
Yeah,
to sound completely lame there, but I mean, it's kind of what it is in a weird way.
Totally.
So, is the first story that you guys are working on, is that something we can still see, or is that just kind of lost to the ether?
So yeah, we have. So as we brought a bunch of people on board, what we started doing, there's two components of lesser known comics. So we have a lesser known universe, which has stories where I'm primarily doing the writing. We have a few other writers, Charlie Ragnarok, and then a couple more that are on board. Their stuff's still in development. So that's all happening within like a universe, the same way Marvel, all those characters happen in the universe. But then the other component of lesser known comics is the creator owned side, where, folks like Gabe, Valentine and Carrie Langell, they're bringing books to us. And then even some of our folks that are working on the lesser known universe stuff, they're bringing their own titles. So Charlie has So I Worked at the Mall, and she's got a bunch of awesome vampire stuff in the queue, probably for release sometime next year. But yeah, so we get to have the best of both worlds, like being like a Marvel and DC having our own characters that we get to build this big universe, but then also experience like Image, or Dark Horse, where we have all these other books that are part of our catalog, but not necessarily part of our universe. But we can do fun stuff where we'll hide Easter eggs and little shout outs to non-universe or non-canon stuff within our books.
It's so cool to see something like, to get out and stretch your legs like that, I guess, because like you're just doing what you want to do, right? I mean, within the confines of like, not stepping on anybody's toes. I mean, you're having your cake and eating it too, almost.
Yeah, it's been really fun, because even within the stuff that I write, for lesser known comics, the amount of freedom that we try and give the illustrators to be visual storytellers, we use like a lot of what that Marvel method is, where, for example, I told Franco, okay, the henchmen enter the room, on page 6, and it's up to you how quickly and how violently they all get killed off. You can take 1 page, you can take 10 pages, like whatever feels good to you. And the illustrators really respond to that. And then it also, I'm getting a better story because, I mean, how boring would it be to like read a fight, text line by line, my directions of, okay, this person's going to get kicked in the face, and then this person's going to get thrown, and this person's going to scream, or this, that, and the other thing. So, and it's really become a family in the fact that there's a lot of trust going both ways. So in Franco's case, he's one of our illustrators. He's even told me, oh yeah, I ended up changing the end of the story on this comic, and I was like, well, cool. I like it a lot better than what I had,
So would you consider the art like more of a way to progress the story as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think depending on the illustrator, and depending on how we work together, what the last year's kind of taught me is what each of them enjoy doing, and that gives me that helps me inform what type of story I want to give them. So Andrea Pescasolito, he's one of our he did LKC number 1, 5, and 7. But he loves very trippy, psychedelic type things. So, I was like, oh, this story's got a near-death experience in it. So let's give that to Andrea, because he's going to do that in a totally different way, that he's just going to love it, and he's going to have fun, and he's going to nerd out over it. So, and it gives me ideas as to where to take the story next, because if both of us are having fun, you can get the A and B and C plots, and then sometimes you discover that the B and C plots are sometimes more fun than the A plot.
So basically, like, another part of your job, I'm guessing, is to kind of like put the right people in the right situations.
Yeah, I'd like to think of it that way. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's kind of the way it kind of spells out to me, like I clean toilets for a living, and I know like if a guy's going to want to like actually bust his butt or not, or if I need to send him over with a vacuum or something, like you're putting guys in the right spot to do the right thing to tell the best story. Does that take a lot of your time?
Yeah, it's it doesn't feel like it though. So this is the busiest I've ever been in my life, and but there's a lot of energy that that comes from, doing the work, so, my wife will tell me, she'll say like, like, are you even working in your office right now? Cause all I hear is like laughing, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I work with comic book creators all day long. It's a pretty fun time, so.
We use our imaginations all day and make up stories. I mean, let's just be pretty blunt with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and I've had so many fun pitch meetings and things like that where someone comes to me and they said, okay, I got an idea. Carrie, who's doing the Digital Lizards of Doom book 3, she came to me and said, I got this idea for this book. It's called Catbot. I was like, okay, I'm super intrigued, Catbot. And she explained this story to me about, piloting these, Gundam type, giant robots. And one of the characters is co-piloting it with their cat, and it's just like, yes, yes to all of that. And,
Yes.
So, the hours just like fly off the clock, when you're working on stuff like that.
Most definitely, dude. Let's jump in to the big news of the week, though, if we can.
Sure.
Ray Porter, Darkseid voice in the Snyder Cut, writes the foreword for DLOD 3. 3 little quick rapid fire. How in the world have you seen it? And if you have, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, that was so one of the things with Gabe, just to give like some context of what it's like working with Gabe and Digital Lizards of Doom is, he's got the music and he's got, he's got the books. And it's not just within the music, you got the orchestral stuff, and he's always wanting to do something else. When we went to LA Comic-Con and we're unpacking the van, this was like the first time me meeting him in person. I'm unloading this big box and there's a bunch of puppets in the box of all the characters. And I was just like, of course, like, why wouldn't there be, a bunch of just puppets like randomly in this box? So when he told me, oh yeah, the foreword for the next books, was written by Ray Porter, I was like, of course, why, why not?
Why not pull out the other Ferrari out of the garage?
Yeah.
So to speak.
It's, and he, so I said, oh, and you kind of measure your expectations, of what that forward's going to look like. It's busy, Ray Porter's a busy guy, he's, the main villain in the #1 comic book movie, arguably. So what could this possibly look like? And, when we read it, just the amount of care that went into it, it's, in many ways, the foreword is almost written like poetry in a way, because, he talks about, beauty and art, and this kind of human nature that sometimes tries to confine it, and how, Gabe finds a way to kind of break out of those molds, where, he's kind of this, person who's always, pushing art to the limit and making that experience something really special and something unique that you're not going to see anywhere else. But the forward, him taking the care and explaining it that way was very, it was very humbling and very impressive, just because, you never know, how much time, spare time somebody like this has, and to see them put that level of care in it.
Well, not, pun intended. It sounds like he did it justice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also to see him tweet about it as well. That was really, really, because, I'm not sure what his audience, thinks about it, but it's like, cause I'm sure they're all just waiting for the next, little nugget about, hashtag restore the Snyderverse and stuff like that, and all of a sudden he's tweeting about Digital Lizards of Doom, but it's just really cool to see.
Yeah, that's gotta be, that'd be like a level up, so to speak, you know, definitely something that, hang your hat on for this next book. But backtrack a little bit. How did the relationship with you and Gabe and Digital Lizards of Doom start?
Um, we have we had somebody. She still works with us. She runs like a companion profile called Lesser Known Coven, having to do with like the witchcraft stuff that's in some of our lesser known comics book. And so, pardon me, her name's Yvette, and yeah, she just reached out to Gabe and just said hi one day, and that kind of introduced him to me, and we were just two creators kind of in the same space, but we didn't really talk a whole lot. And then when he left his previous publisher, we kind of linked up during the summer, and initially, we were supposed to just be kind of a landing pad for him to, bring his content to, and then, kind of get his bearings back and then go, potentially go somewhere else. But how he's interacted with the rest of the team and how me and his friendship has evolved, he's just like, dude, I'm not going anywhere. And I was like, well, I mean, you're welcome to stay, as long as you want, and I think just little things having him on the team speak a lot to his character, because we specialize in bringing in a lot of first time creators. So I remember one of them was just about to hit 1,000 followers on their social media, and she was really, really, like, oh, this is cool, like I'm at 995 or something like that. And she was texting me that, and I showed Gabe the text, and we were out hanging out and doing something else, and he was like, oh, let me fix that right now, and he texts a bunch of people, and then all of a sudden she jumped to a couple dozen, over 1,000, and it's just like
the power of positivity, man.
Yeah, he's just never shied away from an opportunity to spread the wealth, and share resources with everybody around him.
So it definitely was the friendship and kind of how it speaks to Gabe's person more than DLOD itself that made you choose to kind of like run with this.
Yeah, I mean, I love the books. It's an interesting format as well, because he does it in the in-game chat style. So basically, when you're following along, it's it's like you're in a video game, and it's like you're following along in like on a tablet or something like that. So he's not using traditional sequential art panels and things like that, like the rest of our catalog. So it's definitely unique, and it took me a second to get used to it. Like I was like, I opened it up and I was like, this is weird, and then I'm like, 17, 20 pages into the first graphic novel. And then like, I was like, okay, like I get it. And then, next thing I know, it's the difference between books that you kind of almost dread getting to the end, because you don't want the experience to be over, versus ones you have to, you put down and read over a couple days, this was definitely a cancel all my plans this afternoon. I'm going to read this book.
Okay, this one's going to get kind of deep here. Well, not deep, but I'm scratching. So you can shake your head no, or we don't have to answer this one. Do you have a date for the DLOD 3 Kickstarter yet?
I don't think we've shared it publicly before, but you can be the first to know. It's it'll be 29 March. So we're gonna go. So that's not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that will be.
Are you guys just like either pumped or dreading it, or pumped and dreading it? I mean, it sounds like you guys are buttholes to elbows out there.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of there's a lot to learn, so this will be the first time. Like I said, we're trying to professionalize the company and operate, like what we think a professional publisher would do, right? So, working with marketing and advertising and all that stuff, but there's a lot to learn in that. And then also press, publicity, marketing, all that stuff has changed rapidly in the digital age and stuff like that. So having to learn, how all this stuff works, using things like Instagram and Facebook and Google Analytics and all that stuff. There's just a lot of apparatus to put into place. And, we'll be in meetings and, I'll just have to be like, yeah, I only understood 13% of what you guys just said, when we're talking to some of the marketing folks, and so there's a lot of remedial education on that front. So I think there's nervous. It feels like going into the finals, like, at school, like having your final at school and you did all your homework and you read the book and you think, you get your little, note cards and stuff, but you're like, who knows, right? Like maybe I'm going to get stumped on this thing, so I feel like we're doing everything we can to prepare, but we'll find out on the 29th.
I think you guys are going to blow the doors off of it, but through this second Kickstarter drop that you guys just had, are you packaging this stuff up at like your house? Are you making the wife help you, or do you have like a place you go to kind of do this and some people to help, or how does that work?
We started doing direct fulfillment from our printer. So we're using a company called Comics Wellspring out of Michigan. And, the interesting thing about them is we like them for a bunch of reasons. They've done a lot for the indie comic community and creating opportunities for first-time creators to get their books published, at very reasonable rates. And they told me that they credit, comic books and printing indie comic books is one of the main, things that helped them get through the pandemic, because a lot of businesses' bottom lines were dramatically affected. So I think that, informs how much care they put into, dealing with, comic book orders and stuff like that. And even to the point where there have been errors on the order forms that I've put in, and like, they've been like, send me a note, hey, Mark, you put this, and this, but I'm sure you meant this, because we have a good working relationship at this point. And, I know for a fact there's other printers out there who would just be like, that's what you put on the email. That's what I printed, so they've been an amazing partner in that regard. And then how everything's been shipping and arriving. I've been really impressed with that, because shipping paper products is sometimes, it's, things show up damaged. And so their success rate on getting books to people, in good condition is super impressive. So, but yeah, the first Kickstarter we ever did, everything was shipped to my house, and then we never again. I can't.
That's what I was wondering for sure, because
it's such a nightmare, and that's one of the reasons we were so delayed. So this year we're going to be doing Kickstarters pretty much each successive month from now and through November. And but last year we were only able to do 2, because there's so many things between when you think a book is done from when it's actually printed and shipped, things, deciding on paper weights, and, figuring out that, maybe you thought the book was done, but it wasn't formatted the right way. So once you get it on paper, the margins don't look exactly right. So we're learning just a lot about, just the printing process and whatnot. And we have a little bit, further to go, because, I think speed's the name of the game. So if you have a partner that's like Comics Wellspring for us, where once we kind of understood what their strengths were as a company and what our strengths were, we're getting better at, making things happen faster. So going into this year, Digital Lizards of Doom, that'll go out on the 29th, or that'll launch on the 29th of March. And the goal is that books will ship, whatever the Monday is after the Kickstarter closes. It'll be really fast, because we have Tank McGregor, right around the corner. Super impressive book. The illustrator from Digital Lizards of Doom, she's got Love Arcadia, and that's going to come, right after Tank McGregor. It's either going to be that or the second. So I Worked at the Mall from Charlie Ragnarok. So there's no shortage of books that we're just like trying to get out there.
Yeah.
So speed will be the name of the game, so that we can make sure that we can get, I'm just excited to get this catalog out.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like we did a breakdown of the catalog on week 1, and it was just like, dude, this stuff is so interesting, and like different titles. Like So I Worked at the Mall thing is hilarious, and like just everything that we were going down, it was just like, you know what, this is interesting. There wasn't really one like rotten egg, so to speak.
Yeah. I think I always feel like the stuff that I'm writing and doing, it's a good, I don't think anyone wants to be on a team where they feel like they're like the star player, right? So like, and I think most of the team for Lesser Known Comics feels the same way. I think a lot of it does cause a little bit of imposter syndrome, where everyone's like, man, look at everyone to the right and left of me is doing. And I think it gives like people like a little bit of like, makes them a little self-conscious. And when you hear like how everybody talks about their own work, like they kind of sometimes undersell it, because I'm like, oh, your stuff's really good. And they're like, yeah, but Kayla's is amazing, or Katie's is amazing. So but yeah, I'm always, it challenges me, because I like feel really, really good about something I make, and then Charlie will put something out there and I'll be like, oh my God, I couldn't do that in a million years if I wanted to.
As a guitar player, musician, like it's so relatable, because I think everybody deals with that imposter syndrome, man. Mm-hmm. It's almost as bad as COVID-19.
Yeah. It's, but we are a hippie commune in the fact that like, it is a very supportive team. We talk about our feelings a lot in team meetings. It's a pretty, it's a pretty welcoming and nurturing space.
Well, that's kind of a segue to this question for sure. Are you currently working or writing on anything, or are you just kind of trying to make sure things get out the door perfectly?
Yeah, I have, I have more story arcs actually in production than I can count. So, so all the ones that are listed, you can see them on the website, like the Lesser Known Comics number 1 through 7 that have been released. So that's basically like a deconstructed anthology, but they're all they all exist in the same universe, different points in time. So each one of those actually represents a story arc that is being worked on to be released later in the year. So we have one called Oaklandia, which is, somewhere between Pineapple Express and Children of the Corn. It's and that's being worked on by Andrea Pescosolito. And then we have Kaijo City, which is Witches versus Samurais, and that's in a fictitious, like kind of like Tokyo location, 1980s Japan. And then there's Death Wish, which we'll be pushing a lot during next it'll be a companion with Tank McGregor on that Kickstarter. So you get Tank McGregor graphic novel, and you can also get Death Wish and another book, Good Night. But yeah, so but one of the things I struggle with is trying to manage both the creative time and the business time, because writing and editing and all that stuff takes a lot of time that I'd rather my stuff be late than any of the creators, because I can disappoint myself and not have to worry about making feeling guilty. But I've also started working with a few other writers that are helping me take those series. So if I'm working on issue 2, they're actually helping me work on issue 3 and 4, so that lift is a lot lighter when I get there.
It's always good to have a little bit of help, man, because good help is hard to find.
Yeah.
My word. So I've got a few more questions here. I don't want to take up all your time, but I've been seeing some awesome artwork you guys have been sharing by the Book of the Arcane Meta Sequence. What is going on? Like, can you explain any of this at all?
Gladly. So once again, just being victim of the too much stuff, too few hours of the day. So within the stories that I'm working on, there's a big witchcraft, theme along the whole story arc. So, the elevator pitch of it is, we have this main character, Daniela Rosales. She's was from the 1860s. She starts to figure out magic, and she uses it, up until present time. But and she's kind of like our Wolverine, but not like Wolverine in the fact where, Wolverine is the best at what he does. Like, she's like, doesn't read the fine print. She doesn't think through her consequences. So, how like Wolverine, when he travels places, he's always got beef with somebody. Her similarly, where she's got not beef with people, but consequences from, hundreds of years of, piss poor decision making. So, within that, in the story, she meets somebody who's based on the creator of that artwork you're seeing. He actually has a PhD in, not just the, history and anthropology of magic, but he contests that you can't study magic without practicing it. You can know the history of it, and you can know the anthropologic implications of magic and its and how it affects this, people's belief systems and stuff like that. But he's like, unless you're inducing trances and unless you're doing the actual, practices, like, you really don't understand it, right? It'd be like saying being a history expert on China but never have traveled there. So yeah, he actually he is building a tarot deck that's derived from the content of the lesser known universe, and he does actual traditional, like historically accurate magical practices in order to induce trances and things like that for the purpose of creating that art. So in one of those pictures, he's got that obsidian, the black mirror, so he stares into it until he sees the weird stuff, and then the weird stuff goes, onto the paper.
That's what I was going to say. The dude hallucinates before he starts drawing, and it's like, if it's not good enough, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to put out subpar work. And yeah. I was blown away. I'm like, holy Moses, this is nuts.
Yeah. So he is one of the most interesting people I've ever encountered. And that's another thing that's getting that in the calendar for release. So he's working on an entire tarot deck that's going to take the year. I think we're gonna aim for Lunar New Year for the release of the full.
That's perfect.
Full deck. Yeah. So
that's crazy. Adding magic to the lesser known, literal magic to lesser known, like universe. Like your guys' roots are getting deeper.
Yeah. So we're hoping to, even within our books and stuff, is embedding that, the glyphs and rune markings and stuff like that, so that it's like even just within the textures and backgrounds and stuff like that of some of our logos and back covers and stuff like that. He said he didn't want to do anything unless it was legitimately occult. So I said I can meet you there, buddy.
Dude, we can meet halfway for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 more here. What do you contribute to your success? Is it taking time for yourself? Is it just always constantly working? What do you contribute in your life right now to the success you are having? Because I mean, with DLOD3 coming and then the Ray Porter, and then way lesser known is growing, like this is pretty cool, man, for sure.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind of, it doesn't matter, that saying, doesn't matter how fast you go, as long as you keep going. That's that comes to mind because it never, the to-do list always gets longer, right? So every day I actually feel like, you got to fight that voice that's like saying like, hey, yeah, you did one thing today, but here's the 10 things that you didn't do, and that voice is really hard to shut out, because it can get really loud. And, the other part of it too is that, not to load you up with all the cliches from all like the self-help stuff, but like that, you can go fast on your own, but you're going to be able to go farther together, and this is a very team-oriented group. One of the things that I insist on with anybody that we add to the team is I could give 2 shits how well you're doing on your own if you're not helping everybody to the left and right of you. Like we just don't. That's not the culture we have. There's a lot of talented creators out there, but if they're not trying to, lift the tide for all boats, then it's, there's go find another place, that's not a statement of judgment. It's just like, they're just not going to thrive here, and
sounds like you're a big believer in the tribe, kind of like what Boba Fett was building, if you're into that.
Yeah. It just, I'm 100% confident in our success. My biggest concern is that how we get there. I want us to get there in a way that we feel good about ourselves and we preserve our friendships and relationships with each other, because we're not going to enjoy it. We're not going to enjoy it if we take, cutthroat approach, or we take a selfish approach. We have to arrive there together, or else it's not going to be worth the effort that we